Ready? I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9:07 a.m. I ask as a courtesy to all that you silence your cell phones. I would also like to remind our directors to turn their microphones on and off each time they speak to help with the quality of the audio and video recordings. Each director received notice of the board meeting, and the public meeting notice was properly posted as required by law. Directors Bell, Brashear, and White indicated they would not be present for this meeting. We have set aside at this time to hear from you, the general public, those of you that are interested in providing comments have filled out one of the cards available at the receptionist desk. Will be called on to approach the podium to make your comments at this time. We encourage you to speak your mind and tell us your thoughts. Be mindful, however, that while you can say anything you wish, the board cannot deliberate or discuss issues that are not posted on the meeting notice. That is not our requirement. It's state law. Board is limited in its ability to participate in discussion or deliberations by the provisions of the Open Meetings Act. The Open Meetings Act authorizes a government body to give members of the public an opportunity to speak at a public meeting and provide comments. However, the board may not deliberate on actions or act on any matters which have not been specifically posted on the agenda. In an effort to provide everyone an opportunity to speak, we request that each presentation be limited to 3 minutes. Our first speaker this morning will be Mark Danielson.
Thank you for having us. Clearly, our water situation has significantly changed since your last quarterly meeting. In a single month, Texas went from extreme drought to flooding. While his deluge was most welcomed, by most anyway, it doesn't change our requirements for water conservation. My final assignment in the Navy was to serve as the project officer to reopen Carswell Air Force Base as Naval Air Station Fort Worth Joint Reserve Base. Our primary goal was to combine several bases and eliminate duplication. The only difference between military and state asset management is its scale of operation. In both cases, there must be an equitable distribution of assets. In our case, we're talking about water. At the May quarterly meeting, the slide presentation predicted that the Texas population would nearly double by the year 2060. In its discussion about new water, only 2% was coming from desalination. Board Director Dr. White challenged this, but the presenter quickly moved on. New water can only come from 2 sources: additional man-made lakes or desalination. Since much of the state's river water is being sent to the coast, it only makes sense to construct desalination plants there and retain upstream water for metroplexes that are expanding at a cancerous rate. Many years ago, California had a desalination plant in San Diego. For whatever reason, that plant was sold and moved to Kuwait. And now California is facing its own historical drought. With populations exploding and climate change unpredictable, it's clear that Mother Nature cannot be relied upon to provide our water. According to the BRA website, it's predicted the 2016 expense is $55.7 million with an income of $70 million. BRA income is expected to increase to $158 million by 2032, although there is no explanation as to how this will occur. While I'm not clear where this profit goes, it only makes sense to invest it in an infrastructure that will keep Texas alive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir. Seeing there's no other speakers, we will now move to the first agenda item. Report and possible discussion on report on external audit plans and statutes of audit by Mike O'Brien, Paget Stratman Company, LLP.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm Mike O'Brien, here to give you the pre-audit report. Today, I'll be happy to answer any questions as I go. This is my contact information. We have been engaged by the board to conduct the financial statement audit again this year. We do, just to remind you, we do work for the board. Of course, when we conduct the audit, we work with management and staff to actually do the work. But at this point and any time during the process, we're open to hear any concerns, questions, or comments you may have about the process. So today I'm going to communicate to you a high-level overview about the audit process, timing, etc. Things that typically sometimes boards want to communicate to us. I've listed some bullet points, any things you have concerns about, questions, any accounting practices or transactions. You can ask me today, or I've given you my contact information. I'm available anytime by email or phone if you want to communicate anything or ask me any questions.
He's the one that gave me this letter.
So what we've been engaged to do by the River Authority is to audit the financial statements for 2015, and we issue a report on our audit procedures. The River Authority staff does do all the preparation of the financial statements, so we are in the highest level of independence in that we're not preparing the information, we are auditing. In addition, the authority receives some federal and state grants. Depending on the dollar amount of those, there can be a compliance audit required on those audit on those grants. So we conduct the audit in accordance with the AICPA, or American Institute of CPA standards, and the government auditing standards, which is issued by the federal government. And at the end of the audit, in addition to our auditor's report on the financial statements, there's a list of other information and communication that we'll provide to the board about the audit process, and I've got a slide on that at the end. So at this point, we have done some preliminary planning. So this is a kind of a fancy chart to say we go out and gather information about the current year activities and internal controls and business operations and boil that down into what we see as the risks of misstatement could be. So in other words, we're doing our audit on a test basis. We have to identify what we think are the highest risk items of material misstatement to the financial statements, and then we conduct our audit procedures with respect to that. So this kind of helps point out things that you might have concern about or question. Again, we're here to hear any questions you have or any comments, or provide that to us at a different date by email or phone. It's just a reminder about kind of how the audit workflow occurs. We've already done our most of our preliminary planning, met with management, done some updating on procedures and controls at this point, and then of course we're here to hear from the board or provide you a briefing. Most of the actual audit work happens after the end of the year in the October-November time frame. Then staff prepares the reports. We review all those in November, report back to the board at the January board meeting, and the final report is issued at that time after you've had a chance to review and approve of it. As I mentioned earlier, we're focusing on auditing the financial statements. We're not auditing management's performance over operations. We're not auditing the economy or efficiency of operations. We're auditing the financial statements to make sure that they're fairly presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. When we do an audit, we do review procedures and controls. If we became aware of anything that we consider to be what we call material weaknesses, which could be something that might result in a material misstatement in the financial statements, we have an obligation to report those to the board in writing. So not to just let you know, we do testing on internal controls, we do review them, but we're not giving an opinion on the system. The main areas we look at during the course of the audit are payroll, kind of the cash, the disbursement process, and the sales and cash receipts. In the federal and state grant area, if the threshold is met, which is $500,000 in expenditures for any one grant, we'll do a compliance audit over that grant, which is really a lower level audit. It's more transactional and compliance with rules and regulations. The last couple of years, you haven't met the threshold, so no official report's been required. But that's one of the things we have to, assure during the course of the audit to see if that is required. And finally, at the end of the audit, in addition to our auditor's report on the financial statements, this is a whole list of things we will communicate about our process. So if you don't hear from us between now and January, that means everything's going smooth, there's no big issues or problems. We communicate most of the things in the right-hand column at the end of the audit. If there were a major dispute or disagreement or fraud or illegal act uncovered, we would communicate that to the chair of the board, immediately upon that occurrence. That is a quick, high-level overview and completes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
What is your interaction with that internal audit?
In the past, we have interacted with the internal audit function and reviewed what they did to see if there was anything we could rely on or any issues uncovered that we might need to be aware of. In the last year or two, since that position has been vacant and whatnot, there hasn't been a lot that we could deal with. But when the internal audit function is up and running, we communicate with them, and they communicate with us on risks of misstatement.
Just on an as-needed basis?
Yeah, that's correct.
They would probably at their request.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we go into agenda item number 2, we have another speaker at public comment was overlooked, and he would like to make his presentation, Mr. Tony Allen.
Thank you. I'm Tony Allen. I live in Granbury, Texas. First, I want to apologize. That was my phone that went off. I forgot to cut it off, and I apologize. So I made a mistake. So I wish my wife was here to hear that. But anyway, good morning, Mr. Ford again. Board, appreciate the time that y'all listen to us or listen to me when I come down here and I gripe about our water level. But thank God for rain. I know that had to take a little bit of a load off of BRA. Like Mr. Ford said earlier, that there's somebody going to gripe about something, and that's true. And but I do thank y'all for your time. I want to thank the board, the BRA staff, for a great job during all the rain. Granbury did not get any flooding whatsoever. Did a great job. There's a lot of lakes that you couldn't get on the 4th of July. Our lake was packed. We had boats everywhere. Our economy's good, our tax base is up, and thank God for rain, and thank God for BRA for a great job of management. I mean that. Now, that's the good part. Then we'll get on the bad part. I asked about the half study to be done. This is a great time, board, to enforce this. Less than $100,000. There's water full from PK to the ocean. If we're wrong, I won't speak for the whole city of Granbury or HUD County. I'll go away if we're wrong on our study. If we're right, we ask you to change it. That's all we ask. The other thing that I'd like to talk to you about is the 500 acres that's fixing to be sold. I know there's been a lot of talk about, was the first land sold correctly? Was it sold illegal? Was it done this or done that? I don't know those answers. I'm not that smart. But does the BRA board feel comfortable with the bid they have just received. Do y'all feel comfortable with that bid? Does it seem suspicious that 3 of the 6 bids, 3 out of the 6, 50% of the bids were submitted by companies that were created within 7 days of each other? That's a week. 3 companies incorporated to bid on these 500 acres. That was done May 2015. That's only 2 months ago, folks. Look at it close. Look out for the taxpayers of Texas, just like we do when we're working with our city. Make sure, please, that is a good bid and everything's above board. Thank you and have a great day, and God bless Texas.
Thank you, sir. We will now proceed on to agenda item number 2, report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2015 third quarter budget report by Jim Forte, interim chief financial officer.
Good morning. I've got several agenda items today. If you'll, this is a regular report, third quarter financials. This graph and the one following it were included in the materials that were in your packet. Essentially, we're a little more than $2 million a year, or $2 million above our revenue budget, primarily due to the sale of interruptible water. We're about $4 million below schedule in our expenditures, and that's just generally distributed across the board through the various BRA departments. And project expenditures, we've only spent about $3 million out of the $19 million that was budgeted, and that is due to some of those projects being delayed due to any number of circumstances. This other graph shows what we're spending on. You can see that salaries and benefits make up about 40% of the budget. Debt service over here, another 25%. The balance of other expenditures, all very few of them in double digits. Here it is numerically. Fund balance, ending reserves as we forecast them right now, a little bit under $58 million. We have sold one piece of property up at PK. I believe that was the Costello Island piece that closed. And I can answer any questions that you might have about third quarter.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
That completes my presentation if anybody has any questions.
Gives an extra 2, didn't he? Just finished 3. 4. Agenda item number 4, 3. Report and possible discussion on investment officer's report, third quarter of fiscal year 2015 by Jim Forte, interim chief financial officer.
This report, we tried to make it a little more graphic to give a better you a better understanding of our investments. Here's a 10-year history of our portfolio. This, of course, relates to the initial sale of property at Possum Kingdom, and this drawdown here was the result of us undertaking a number of cash defeasances of some outstanding debt in order to take advantage of the fact that our earnings were less than 1%, and we were paying, in some cases, greater than 5% on that debt. And each one of those was brought to you as we did them. And just an analysis that we performed, we probably saved our ratepayers somewhere between $15 and $20 million in present value on the interest that we deferred on paying that debt up front. Here's where we're invested. You can see that about a half a year out to 2 years, interest rates continue to be low. There's no advantage to going long on the yield curve to chase any type of yield. I believe the Federal Reserve governors meet this week, and there's rumors and speculation that interest rates might go up. I don't contemplate that they'll go up dramatically, but we will watch that along with our advisors and manage our portfolio accordingly. In terms of performance, our benchmark is the one-year Treasury. You can see, and this goes back about 7 years, you can see it's down here in the I guess about 20 or so basis point range. A lot of municipalities and other local governments in Texas invest in tax pool. You can see it's just barely above no yield. Our portfolio is yielding 0.64%, so we're the approach that we use to investing our money is far greater than our benchmark, and obviously better than putting into a pool. And that completes that presentation, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Seeing no questions, we'll go on to agenda item number 4, discussion and possible action on Brazos River Authority bylaws by Riley Woods, Senior Staff Attorney.
Good morning. Here's what we're doing today. As you know, we've put in the cameras, and we've sort of got a new way of recording the board meetings. So we went back to the bylaws, which primarily covered tape recordings of meetings, and we wanted to update it to include that. And while we were in the process of updating it, there were a few administrative edits to bring clarity and consistency to the bylaws that we made as well, and we'll go through those here in just a second. And probably the most substantive of those being back in 2004 when we adopted the current bylaws. Apparently, assistant secretaries fell out for some reason, don't know why, but we do use them, and we've been using them. And so we've put that language back in the bylaws. It helps with signing mainly banking documents and so forth whenever the secretary isn't available. And if we want to move the next slide, I think actually I've just got the resolution here. You can see basically we're kind of retitling some sections, adding the term officer in places, and deleting some words just to make consistency, non-substantive changes. Go to the next slide again real quick. Yeah, once again, just some administrative changes. Next slide. And yeah, this is once again just clarifying some language as to the duty of the secretary. Next slide. Oh yeah, once again as well, making some edits to the appointment or to the treasurer and what the treasurer does. Since the time we adopted the first bylaws, there have been other laws and so forth that have come into effect that deal with how money's handled, and we're making that clear here. Next, this is a section adding assistant secretaries, and the rest of these are also just minor edits, and you can see the very last one here is dealing with the recordings. We just deleted tape recordings and just allow us to do recordings. And if y'all, does anybody have questions? If not, I can read the resolution.
Any questions? Okay, please read the resolution.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves the following changes to the Brazos River Authority bylaws. 1, retitle the following articles and sections. A, retitle Article 3, Officers and Duties. B, retitle Section 3.01, Officers. C, retitle Section 4.03, Officer Terms. D, retitle Section 6.02, Notices of Special Meetings and Committee Meetings. E, retitle Section 6.07, waiver of meeting notice. F, retitle Section 8.03, quorum for committee meetings. G, retitle Section 8.05, officer duties. H, retitle Article 9, recordings and minutes. I, retitle Section 9.01, recordings, contents of minutes. J, add new Section 3.05, assistant secretary. 2, in Section 3.04, election of secretary and duties, item 4, replace the word "see" with the word "require." 3, delete the language in Section 3.04, election of secretary and duties, item 5 in its entirety, and replace with the following language: sign with the presiding officer such deeds, bonds, contracts, mortgages, and other instruments which the Board of Directors has authorized to be executed, and with respect to which authority has not been given to others and shall not by law be required to be otherwise executed. 4, renumber Section 3.05, appointment of treasurer and duties, to Section 3.06, and delete all language in this section following the first paragraph and replace with the following: the treasurer shall ensure compliance by the BRA with generally accepted accounting principles as well as the Texas Public Funds Investment Act and any other state or federal regulations, statutes, or legislative requirements as may be applicable to the BRA and as they may be from time to time amended or revised. 5, add new Section 3.05, appointment of assistant secretary, to read as follows: as some obligations of the secretary may require action at times when the board is not meeting or the secretary is otherwise unavailable, the board shall appoint assistant secretary or assistant secretaries who shall assist the secretary and be authorized to act on behalf of the secretary to take such actions as may be necessary to fulfill the duties of the secretary. 6, in Section 4.04, officer term limitations, replace board officer with officer in the third paragraph. 7, delete the last sentence in Section 6.05, content of all meeting notices in its entirety. 8, delete the language in Section 9.01, recordings, content of minutes in its entirety, and replace with the following: written minutes or recordings shall be kept of all open meetings of the Board of Directors and of committees of the board.
You heard a reading of the resolution. Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Richard Ball, second. Sarah? Yep. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 5, discussion and possible action on appointment of assistant secretary by Riley Woods, senior staff attorney.
Okay, once again, as I just mentioned a second ago, we have assistant secretaries, and one of our assistant secretaries recently resigned, and so we're replacing him with Jim Forte. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, I can read the resolution.
Read the resolution, please, sir.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby appoints James D. Forte as an Assistant Secretary of the Brazos River Authority.
You heard the resolution. Motion to adopt. Bob, second. Tish and Mark. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on Texas County District Requirement System, PCRS, Retirement Plan, Biological Human Resources Plan.
Good morning. Each year I bring this agenda item for the board's consideration. Move on. We've been with TCDRS since 2008, and as you can see, nearly each year our rate has gone down slightly, with a rate proposal for the following year, 2016 calendar year, to be 7.13%. As a whole, TCDRS is among one of the 15 most funded retirement plans in the nation for public entities. And as you can see, we're sitting at just about 96%, just slightly below 96% for our funded ratio history for the Brazos River Authority. So our plan is quite well funded in TCDRS. Included in diligent were the summary evaluation report and the plan assessment, which provide detailed information on the plan management. And if there are no further questions, I'll read the resolution. Yes, sir. Okay. Be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority that the Texas County and District Retirement System, TCDRS, plan provisions for the Brazos River Authority non-retirees remain the same for the 2016 plan year, and be it further resolved that the TCDRS plan provisions for Brazos River Authority retirees remain the same for the 2016 plan year, and be it further resolved that the required TCDRS employer contribution rate will be 7.13% for the 2016 plan year.
You've heard the resolution and the motion to adopt. Belt. Second. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes. Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director White. I'm sorry, Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 7, discussion of possible action on employee benefits plan designed by Monica Wheelis, Human Resources Manager, and Brent Wegar with IPS Advisors, LLP.
As we discussed at the October board meeting, our medical plan has been experiencing several years of increased liabilities, such as increasing claims expenses, administrative costs, rising stop-loss premiums, and while at the same time we're experiencing additional costs, our employee base has been decreasing steadily. For the current plan year, we added a high deductible health plan in addition to the PPO plan that we had, and we made substantial changes to the PPO plan and high deductible health plan to help reduce costs. We increased deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums. We reduced services that had been included in the office visit copays. We increased dependent premiums by 20%, and employees who remained on the PPO plan now contribute $50 per month toward their health care premium. So clearly we need to find a better alternative, something to move us forward and to stop the bleed. So we solicited proposals for a benefit consultant, and we selected IPS Advisors. IPS began by conducting a benchmarking analysis, historical cost analysis, reviewing our plan design, contributions, the network, our administration. And Brent Weger is our primary consultant. He's here today to discuss his findings and recommendations for us as we move forward. And then following his presentation, I'll come back up and present a resolution for your consideration.
Okay.
Good morning. So today I'll be going over with you our findings and recommendations based upon what we have found through our review of the last 5 years of healthcare claims and basically the platform you've been implementing under a partially self-insured approach, and provide you our recommendations moving forward. The first piece of this is a quick historical health plan cost update. So looking at the calendar year plan year versus the prior plan year to show you a little bit about how the plan is running. If you look at this slide, you'll see that we are showing the claims data and fixed costs that the Brazos River Authority is paying. In 2014, the Brazos River Authority incurred about $2.7 million of medical claims, $493 of prescription drug claims, and then in terms of fixed costs, the cost you're paying to run the partially self-insured health plan and the premium cost you're paying for stop loss are shown here. So $93,000 is what you pay to Texas Municipal League to run the health plan, to pay the claims. Aggregate stop loss and individual stop loss were also paid to protect the plan in case of large claims cost. Those were about $13,000 annually and $378,000 for the individual stop loss, for a total plan cost of about $3.7 million. We did have a substantial amount of stop loss claims last year, about $978,000 of reimbursements. And what stop loss claims are is basically you buy protection on any individual that is on your health plan up to $90,000. So Brazos River Authority funds the first $90,000. After that has been paid, the stop loss comes in and protects you and pays up to the remainder of the amount. So $978,000 of stop loss was paid last year, meaning there was some substantial large claims on the health plan. That plays into account for our liability this year and why we're experiencing increases. In 2015, you'll see the year-to-date numbers. We had about $1 million in medical claims, and you can, of course, see total cost on the far right, about $1.5 million of plan cost. There have been $265,000 of stop-loss claims paid out to date, to a net paid claims total of about $1.248 million, annualized about $3 million of health plan cost, $275,000 above last year's results. Per capita, if we take a look at the total number of employees, we divide the total cost by the number of employees, you'll see the per capita changes. So the per capita was $12,179 last year. This year it's $12,950, about a 6.3% increase overall. It's important to note that because of the 2014 plan year, there were some substantial large claims on the health plan. And under a partially self-insured arrangement, a stop-loss carrier can create a renewal that basically gives higher stop-loss deductible levels to certain high-cost claimants. There are 3 individual laser deductibles, as they call them, meaning that one claimant had a $300,000 laser deductible on them, meaning that the Brazos River Authority had to meet $300,000 instead of the $90,000 in order for stop-loss claims to be paid. And this is common to see with substantial large claimants on a small entity like the Brazos River Authority. There's not enough premium being paid within the stop-loss policy to fund those sorts of claims. So if we take into account that additional liability, it is really the reason why you're experiencing costs this year, increased costs this year. Last year, you had 12 claimants incur about 50% of your health plan cost. This year, 3 claimants have incurred 50% of your health plan costs. It's all because of the laser liabilities that is on the Brazos River Authority today. There's a $300,000 laser and 2 $125,000 lasers, all which are about to hit those deductible levels. So with that being said, one of the goals that we had was looking at, is partially self-funding the right strategy moving forward in the long term? And we've done some calculations we'll show you here in a little bit, showing you what our recommendation is moving forward in terms of partially self-insuring your health plan or moving to a traditional fully insured approach where you have a fixed level of premiums and there's not the volatility on paid claims that you see currently and the liability to the plan. The next page will show you over the past 5 years how the plan has operated in terms of claims cost, because claims costs make up about 90% of the total cost to the health plan. In 2010, per capita health plan costs were $6,955. That's experienced about a 54% increase over the past to 2015 annualized to $10,465. It's about a 10.8% increase per year. Yes, sir.
Is inflation taken into consideration in these numbers?
Certainly. Naturally, healthcare costs are going to increase over time due to healthcare price inflation over that time.
The comparison of the cost year over year.
Yes, sir.
It is, okay.
Yes, sir. So you've been averaging about, again, like I said, 10.7%. The market over this time period has averaged about 7%. So you have experienced not only the inflationary effects, but also just higher utilization of healthcare than other entities. The next page is the per capita cost versus the nation. And so what we've done here is taken your total claims cost in 2014 and 2015 annualized, added the fixed fees to that. The fixed fees are your cost for TML administration and your fixed cost for premiums for your stop loss. You'll see in 2015 in the red column, we did have an HSA contribution this plan year because you put in a new health savings account plan option. And so you'll see the total cost in 2014 was $12,180. In 2015 annualized, it's $13,308. The national benchmark Towers Watson Healthcare Cost Survey for 2014 was $12,535. We also did a benchmarking study of 37 public entities across the state, and their cost was $12,135. So as you can see, you're very close in 2014 and 2015. We're tracking well above that benchmark. So wanted to give you a sense of where you stood in terms of other entities across the nation and within the state of Texas. The next page is the 2016 budget projections. So we looked at 2014, the actual partially self-funded cost, and then in the red columns you will see what we are projecting on an annualized basis. If we took what we spent to date, annualized it, where we'd be at. The 2015 projected partially self-funded costs. So this is where IPS takes into account even more factors than just annualized numbers. We look at large claims, utilization, plan design, projected increases or decreases in cost, and give you a projected 2015 number. And then we give you 2015 funding rates. These are the actual rates that the that Brazos River Authority has in place today, and we multiply that out by the number of employees that are enrolled. And then we give you 2016 projected partially self-funded cost in the blue, and then a 2016 projected fully insured cost also in the far right column to show you what we would project if you were to move to a to a projected fully insured arrangement. You'll see in 2015 on the first red column, right now we're annualized at a 12.7% increase. Projected partially self-funded is at 10.8%, and the funding rates are at a minus 10.5%. What that means is basically claims or costs are well above what you set your funding rates at this last year, and there's need to be some adjustments because of that. The 2016 projected partially self-funded renewal is at 5.5%. So this is what we're projecting your claims cost to be at next year, as well as stop loss fees, medical administrative fees, healthcare reform fees, projected incurred but not reported claims, and HSA contributions. Under a fully insured arrangement at this time, we're projecting about a 3.7% increase in cost, so a slightly lower number. I would mention that under the fully insured projection, we're also including $304,000 of incurred but not reported claims. So if you were to end your partially self-funded plan as of December 31st, 2015, there will be claims that are incurred prior to that time that are going to be paid out in January, February, and March of the next year. So that has to be a liability to take into account under a fully insured projection. What I'd mention here that's not included on this page is the liability to the Brazos River Authority under a partially self-funded approach. The 2016 projected partial self-funded numbers are a projection of where we are going to be next year. However, your liability is much higher than that. The liability overall is about $3.8 million, meaning that if claims come above projections, you're going to be funding up to $3.8 million. After that, stop loss will come into effect on an aggregate basis to protect the Brazos River Authority. as opposed to a fully insured arrangement, where under a fully insured arrangement, your liability is capped. You can have as many claims come through, they could be well above projections, but your cap is set at 3.7%. Now, that's what we're projecting under a fully insured approach right now, based upon the last 24 months of claims experience. So our recommendation moving forward is going to be looking at a fully insured arrangement from a platform perspective. First of all, it's a fixed premium cost. The carrier assumes the financial risk for paying incurred claims cost. Right now, you're assuming that financial risk all the way up to 25% above expected paid claims, which is a substantial number, especially on a group that only has about 230 employees. There's no opportunity for laser deductibles underneath this arrangement. So when we talked about the $300,000 laser deductible and the others, there is no opportunity for those arrangements within a fully insured contract. You buy an internal pooling point that's set up, and we're projecting it at about $125,000 as the internal pooling point, but that number doesn't change over time. That number is set up by the insurance carrier under a fully insured arrangement, and risk is spread across the entire block of business of that fully insured carrier. Like I said before, the maximum annual liability is much higher under the partially self-insured arrangement. There's also less legal risk to the health plan being under a fully insured arrangement. There's the fiduciary liability that comes with partially self-funding, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. There's much more legal risk there, having your data available and being able to look at individual claimants. So you have to be very careful for protection of that information. And of course, the Affordable Care Act as well. There are fees you're going to have to pay under that arrangement, and the fully insured arrangement, that's all taken care of. And then last, of course, those fees. Yes, sir.
When you talk about the fixed cost, are you anticipating in this prediction of what happens next year when the fully insured carrier has a change in premium of some huge percent, which is known to happen in the industry? Mm-hmm. Have you been able to, or have you done any anticipation of that when you compare maybe the first year? Yes, it's much less expensive, but how can we predict that the next year?
Well, the thing that we've done in our projection is included the incurred but not reported claims. If we were not to include the incurred but not reported claims within our fully insured projection, we could be faced with an issue from a financial standpoint. But in my projection back here, you'll see we included $304,000 of that, so that will be included within the budget. So the following year, we will have a budget number that is considered mature and not immature. If we did not include that $304,000 within there, we might set ourselves up for a needed risk down the road from a large increase.
Okay, so we've only had the HSA for 1 year. Do we expect the participants in the HSA to increase? We're kind of having that 1 year under our belt. And is that 3.7%? That's on the full number. Is that, do we consider that per capita as well, or could that actually go down if we have more join to and be part of the HSA?
The HSA, we would expect that to increase over time. It's a first-year plan, so it's not going to have full enrollment that we'd expect a second and third-year plan to have. So it's kind of dependent upon how we set premium structures moving forward to determine how many are going to go into that HSA plan. Until there's a substantial premium cost differential, talking $90 to $100 difference, you're going to average about 20 to 30% participation in that program. So I think over time, as we look at long-term strategies to control healthcare costs, that differential is going to be important to start having employees get into that consumer-driven health plan and really start purchasing healthcare in more efficient ways.
So our projected, well, both projected, the percentage actually could be, I won't say significantly less, but quite a bit less than what you have projected. Is that correct?
It could if there's additional enrollment in the HSA plan. And it all depends how we set our premium structures, given the increase that we're expecting. passing on more to the higher cost plans than the health savings account program. But yes, it could go down based upon that additional enrollment. But I would say here you'll see the enrollment assumed. This is total enrollment. So we assumed about 232 employees within each of those options. Okay. So findings in 2014, and this is important to know, you experienced that 27.1% increase in per capita paid claims cost. You're experiencing an annualized 4.6% increase over that time from 2015. Again, that was really all associated with those laser deductibles. Overall, including increase in fixed costs, we already sits at 13.1% increase over 2014 year-end results. For 2015, the addition of the stop-loss laser deductibles and increased stop-loss premiums and the retention moving up to $90,000 from $80,000 have been primary drivers of the health plan increases, so it's mainly just large claims. And then I mentioned the three lasers that we're experiencing right now, the $300,000, $125,000 for two others. So our recommendations, based upon looking at your historical claims experience, the 2016 claims, and your current liability retention levels, we're recommending to evaluate both fully insured and partially self-insured options this next year. It would be recommended to move to a fully insured arrangement if results come in favorable from that process. And be glad to answer any other questions you have.
Your recommendation is to seek proposals. What was your projection based off of if you didn't already have that information to work
So
with?
our projections, that's based upon our underwriters and our actuaries' projections of where a fully insured renewal would come in versus your partially self-funded renewal. So we're doing our own projections to provide you, of course, budgets for the upcoming year. Now it's the opportunity to go out and actually get proposals. We're so far in front of the renewal process right now. We have to give you our projections and then approach the market for those renewals as we get closer to the end of the plan year. So these were based upon our IPS advisors' projections of your fully insured and partially self-insured renewals.
Okay, and I see that you're located in Dallas. I mean, did you use local information that our employees would actually be using our local?
We used your exact claims experience, so that includes your claims locally and all. I mean, you're all the way around Texas, so there's claims that are coming from all over Texas. So we used your exact claims information, and we projected that moving forward based on regional trends in this area.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
So to clarify, we had about 30% of our employee base transition to the high deductible health plan with the HSA in this year, which was double that what we anticipated, what TML had estimated, the norm to be usually get about 17%. So we had a significant employee base transition, probably because we started charging the $50 premium towards the PPO plan, and there's not on the high deductible plan, those employees did not see that increase, nor did they see the increase on the dependent premium. So we did the shifting of the cost and the premiums based off of leaving it flat for people who transitioned and then increasing it for those people who remained on the PPO. We're bringing this this resolution today rather than in October, because we have to start our open enrollment meetings about mid-October in order to get through the entire organization. When we do open enrollment, HR goes out and we do education meetings, and so we start mid-October starting to do that, do the open enrollment, allowing employees the options, you know, and ability to go home and discuss what's the best for their family. So we would like at this time to ask for authorization for the general manager to have the ability to enter into agreements to transition the Brazos River Authority to a fully insured health care program within the approved budget. We'll solicit proposals starting, you know, as soon as we can move forward. We'll start soliciting for proposals for both fully insured and self-insured programs. We won't have time to go back out a second time if the fully insured don't come in at a reasonable rate. Then we would need to continue with the self-insured, and we would, you know, solicit proposals for the administration of those plans. So in October, we'll come back and brief the board so y'all know where we ended up at the end of the day. So if there are no additional questions, I'll read the resolution.
Please read it.
Whereas the Brazos River Authority has engaged IPS Advisors LLP to evaluate the employee benefit plan design and conduct a plan performance review. Whereas IPS Advisors has conducted a historical analysis of the Brazos River Authority's healthcare benefits, plan design, and associated costs. Whereas IPS Advisors recommends transitioning from a partially self-insured to a fully insured healthcare program in an effort to control rising healthcare costs, reduce administrative burdens, and mitigate liability. And whereas the Brazos River Authority must begin open enrollment activities no later than mid-October to ensure adequate time for employee education and enrollment in benefit programs. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into agreements necessary to transition the BRA from a partially self-insured to a fully insured health care program within the financial parameters set forth in the FY 2016 budget.
You've heard the resolution and motion to adopt. Carolyn. Second, Richard. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 8, report and possible discussion on legislative update by Matt Phillips, Government and Customer Relation Manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. I'm going to go through a little bit about what the legislature did this session. For those of you that attended our annual customer meetings, I apologize. You've seen this presentation before, but the only way I could make it different would be to sing it. I don't think that would make it better, so I'll just go through it and you'll just have to bear with me. This wasn't really a major water session this session. As you know, last session, the legislature approved the funding of the state water plan and provided a constitutional amendment, which the voters passed, to provide $2 billion towards state water plan projects, which was obviously a good thing and a positive for us and other entities that are water suppliers. But usually, in a session after you have a major water session like that, you kind of have a letdown or a lull, and the legislature ends up kind of tinkering around the edges. So that's what they did as it relates to water policy. So I'll go over that a little bit. And I'll also talk about some other bills that passed that affect local governments, that affect us as a local government, and that could affect our customers, and get into some other issues and go through some of the stuff they passed. So first of all, as it relates to water supply, one of the things the legislature had a major focus on was to promote the use of innovative technologies to create water supply. So getting beyond your typical reservoirs and pipelines. And so some of the things that they looked at were brackish groundwater development, aquifer storage and recovery, marine seawater desal, and then they also looked at the use of wind and solar power to desal brackish groundwater. And the whole point of each of these pieces of legislation was to create some regulatory certainty as to how you access these different types of water and how you use these different types of technology to try to promote their usage. So the legislature was attempting to advance the ball and encourage people to look at these technologies in order to meet their future water supply, in addition to things like conservation and building reservoirs and building pipelines. So again, all of these were positives. They were good things. We supported them. And so hopefully people will start attempting to access them here in the near future. If the legislature focused on one particular area of water policy, they focused more on groundwater than they did on surface water. And I'll go through these individually. House Bill 200 has to do with the protesting of desired future conditions that are established by groundwater management areas. Right now, there's not necessarily, or before the passage of House Bill 200, there wasn't a formalized process for folks that disagreed with desired future conditions set by a groundwater management area, which is basically what you want the aquifer to look like in the future and which will limit permitting. There wasn't really a process to protest that. And so what House Bill 200 did is it set up a process very similar to the surface water permitting process, where you protest a desired future condition to the Texas Water Development Board, and then that goes to the State Office of Administrative Hearings, which we're familiar with in the surface water world. So it basically created that due process for protestants. House Bill 1232 is pretty interesting. You would think this is something that existed already, but it requires the Water Development Board to study and find all of the available groundwater in the state. So that's going to be a giant undertaking to see if there are sources that aren't being accessed or thought about to be accessed in the future. So basically create an inventory of groundwater that exists. House Bill 2179 is similar to House Bill 200 in that it formalizes the process to protest groundwater district permits. So that's individual permits, not desired future conditions. But again, very similar to the surface water permitting process, where it allows you to go to SOA and have a hearing in front of administrative law judges if you want to protest a permit. And Senate Bill 854 creates more certainty for permit renewals that aren't requesting an increase in the amount of water or the type of use. So if your permit is basically just renewing and you're keeping it the same, it's pretty much guaranteed now that you will get renewal unless there are some sort of extraordinary circumstances. And before I move to the next one, talking a little bit about groundwater, let me go off slide a little bit and talk about surface water. The legislature didn't ignore surface water this session. They just didn't pass a whole lot of stuff related to it. There were some interesting discussions related to surface water permitting, and they were on two fronts. One of them was a good thing, one of them was not as good of a thing. Neither of them passed. But the legislature did at least consider a piece of legislation that would have put strict time limits on how long TCEQ can take to process surface water right permits. As we know, those permits can take a very long time. And while TCEQ does have administrative rules that stipulate how much time they can take in certain phases, they're administrative rules and they don't necessarily have to follow them. So the goal of that particular piece of legislation, which again did not pass but was discussed, was to put those timelines in statute so that it's harder to ignore them and so that they can be more hard and fast. Again, it was discussed, it was not passed. I think it's something that will continue to be discussed in the future. The other surface water permitting aspect that was discussed but it also did not pass, which was something that we opposed and likely would have been a bad thing, was to require that surface water permits consider their economic impact on affected communities, which on its face sounds okay, but the problem with the legislation is it didn't define what an economic impact was, and it also didn't define what an affected community was, so it could be anything. So essentially it made what is already a difficult, very bureaucratic, very long-term permitting process more difficult and more expensive for everyone involved. So luckily the legislature, while they discussed that one, decided not to move forward with it. So again, they discussed surface water permitting, they just didn't do a whole lot on it. Transparency. House Bill 283 is something that we talked about when we decided to go to video recording of our meetings. And as I said, when we decided to do that, that's a trend. It's something that more and more people are going to do and are going to be required to do in the future. And House Bill 283 is evidence of that because it requires municipalities, special districts, and county commissioners' courts over a certain size population to video record their meetings. They don't necessarily have to live feed them, but they have to video record and archive them on their website. So again, it's the trend, it's the way that we're going, and luckily it's something that we're already doing. House Bill 1378 requires a very specific and intricate reporting of local government debt information. And it's particularly pointed at tax-based entities, but because it requires them to report their debt in a per capita amount for entities that issue ad valorem taxes. One of the things that it does do is it provides an exception for Chapter 49 water districts, which we are one. And the reason for that exception is in our currently required audits and the things that we already do in terms of financial reporting, we already supply most of that information as it pertains to us. So what that piece of legislation does is it says if you're a Chapter 49 water district and you're already complying with your requirements in terms of audits and reporting, just keep doing that and you'll be fine. So that'll mainly affect customers like our cities. 3557 allows entities that cover more than one county to post meeting notices online instead of having to post them in the county clerk's office in every single county that they're in. So it's just using technology to save time and expense. Senate Bill 523, which we talked about at the last meeting, requires 18 different river authorities to go through the sunset review process without abolishment, and it requires the river authorities to pay for that. As we discussed at the last meeting, because of or in recognition of the fact that we already went through an audit by the state auditor's office, an efficiency and effectiveness review by the LBB in 2014, the legislature moved us from the front of the line to the 2021 timeframe, which means that we would be reviewed in 2020 prior to the 2021 session. So again, that's the order that we ended up falling in. And then Senate Bill 1812, entities are already required to report whether or not they have eminent domain authority to the comptroller's office. What Senate Bill 1812 does is it clarifies that the comptroller has to create basically a warehouse of all entities that have eminent domain in the state so that the public can go find any entity that might have eminent domain authority in the area where they live. Ethics and contracting. House Bill 23 may have some minor effect on us as it relates to disclosures, the conflict of interest disclosures that you all have to do as local government officers. So that's something that we'll obviously be informing you on. Most of the changes were clarifying in nature, but it may require more disclosure depending on your situation, and we'll obviously keep you abreast of that. Senate Bill 20 was mainly directed at appropriated state agencies and their contracting practices, and Senate Bill 20 came out of the fallout from the Health and Human Services Commission contracting scandal, debacle, whatever you want to call it. And it put a bunch of very stringent limits on how state agencies can contract and what they have to do and the requirements thereof. It doesn't really affect local government entities with the exception of a revolving door provision that basically makes it to where anybody involved in the procurement of a service or an open bid can't go work for one of the entities that bid for a period of, I think it's 2 years. So it basically shuts that revolving door. It's a pretty strict limit and something that we'll have to comply with, as will all other entities. Finances and bonding, Jim can talk more about how much this might even affect us. We don't necessarily use cap bonds. They are something that we could use. This bill focuses more on entities that use caps that are backed by ad valorem taxes, and it basically makes it to where you can't do it anymore. So this was really a focus on school districts more than it was us, but it may affect some of our customers if they want to use them. I don't think it will affect us in the future should we decide to use caps because, again, we don't have taxing authority, and it's not something that we use. Real estate disclosures. This was an interesting one. 1221 requires disclosure of property that's in a groundwater district when it's sold. Obviously, people want to know if they're in a district and if their ability to pump water is going to be curtailed or that they have to report to a district. So it requires a person that knows they're in one to report it to the buyer. And then House Bill 1665, something that we deal with quite frequently, requires that in all new sales of lakefront property that the fact that the lake level may fluctuate if it's a water supply reservoir be disclosed to the buyer. So it will now be state law. It creates a cause of action if that does not happen. So again, I think we supported that. We think that that's a good thing. So in the future, people will not be able to falsely claim that water supply reservoirs are constant level when they know that they're not. Security, this was one that we actually engaged in. Chemical companies were having a problem with people flying drones over their facilities. and they went to the legislature and asked them to pass a bill to basically prohibit the flying of a drone at an altitude less than 400 feet over what they consider to be their critical infrastructure, which would be anything within a fence line that's something that they protect. During the debate, it was decided that why don't we do this for other critical infrastructure, and we suggested that they include dams, and so they did. So in the future, if it's something that we choose to enforce, people will not be able to fly drones at an altitude lower than 400 feet over our dams and associated infrastructure. And then lastly, on the environmental front, House Bill 1919, for most folks, was more of a clarifying piece of legislation, but it's something that was necessary. And what it basically does is it says that water supply entities like us, in the normal operation of our water supply infrastructure, like our dams, pipelines, et cetera, if we end up moving an invasive species, let's say a zebra mussel, we are not violating the law by being in possession of that invasive species. You wouldn't think that that would be something that would be possible, but a technical reading of the law said that technically you could be in violation of the law by just passing water through a dam, moving it through a pipeline to a treatment plant. So House Bill 1919 clarified that and made sure that entities like us can't get sued or can't be enforced upon by just the normal operations of our infrastructure. And then Senate Bill 912 affects us as a water or wastewater plant operator. A lot of times you have small spills that are minor in nature, that do not reach waters of the state, that are accidental discharges. Right now you have to report every single one of them, no matter how minor, to TCEQ. What Senate Bill 912 does is it allows for smaller spills, smaller accidental discharges below a certain size that don't reach waters of the state to be reported monthly. You don't have to report them immediately. You eventually do have to report them. Now, obviously, larger spills will still have to be reported as normal, but it removes a reporting burden that's unnecessary. So, and I'll wrap up by saying that obviously this isn't an exhaustive list of everything that passed, and just like with every session, what I'll do and what we're already doing is I'll get with Laura Lee in the legal department, go through anything that passed that might affect us, that might require a policy change, that might require you needing to do something new like your disclosures, and we will fully inform you on anything that you'll need to do in the future. I don't anticipate a whole lot, but we'll let you know. Any questions? Thank you.
Due to our time frame, we're going to skip on to agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action on Trinity Well construction contractor award bid by David Collingworth, Central and Lower Basin Regional Manager.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, this is an action item looking for approval to allow staff to go into construction of the Trinity production well. And I've talked to you in the past about the test well and yada yada and all that stuff. But before we get there, I want to show you the puzzle that is Williamson County and talk about how this piece fits into it. Because there's a lot of discussion about areas in the state of Texas that have growth and are continue to experience aggressive growth, and what are the solutions as far as the water struggles go, and this is all part of that puzzle, and I want to show you that and talk a little bit about it. And it goes back all the way to the early 2000s. And what we recognized in the early 2000s is that there were 3 or 4 things happening in Williamson County. First of all, communities that were experiencing 10 to 15 to 12% growth, that was slow. City of Hutto, parts of Georgetown, parts of Liberty Hill, we're talking 25, 30% growth. The other thing that was happening was the construction of Toll Road 130, and other toll roads that went from basically I-35 to the east side of Williamson County to allow for growth and other things and to help alleviate some of the I-35 congestion. So we knew with that toll road coming out there was going to be extensive growth in the area. And then the other thing that was kind of lower on the radar but really concerned us was another highway project which was Chandler Road, which took I-35 here between Georgetown and Round Rock and tied it into near Taylor over here on 95. And it basically took this area, which I'll refer to as Jonah Special Utility District, and turned it into a overnight high growth area. So what we determined at that time was when you look at that map that we show of water shortages and you're looking at 10, 15, 20, 30 years out, this part of Williamson County had an immediate need for water. Not an immediate need for necessarily wet water down the road, but we had an immediate need to free up water and to treat water immediately. The situation that we found ourselves in was all of the water in Lake Granger was under long-term contract with the city of Taylor, 50-year contract. So we were able to go in and renegotiate a deal for the water in this reservoir and buy from the city of Taylor their water treatment facility and immediately expand it. And what that allowed us to do was to begin to meet this need along Chandler Road and 130 with this water out of Lake Granger, and that's what we refer to as the East Williamson County Regional Water System. And then if you've been on the board a while, you know, then we started talking about the new deep water intake. We went and got Water Development Board funding to do things like that. Once we solved that immediate need, we started looking at, okay, we've got other areas of the basin that are going to experience this growth. And that's out here toward I-35 between Gerald and Granger and Bartlett and over into Chisholm Trail Sud. And the solution was, okay, how do you get additional water supplies into that area? And there were really two approaches. I'll go back to that slide. One was to develop the Carrizo and bring the Carrizo in. We talked with you a lot about that over the last 10 years. We found ourselves in different types of negotiations with different folks, trying to figure out how we would bring in something that was regulated by groundwater districts that, quite frankly, posed a significant amount of risk to the BRA. How do you build a $250 million project and then not have insurance over the next 25 to 30 years and how much water you're going to have available? And that really led us to looking into the deep Trinity, the Trinity Aquifer, which sat right under Lake Granger and right under our water treatment plant, as a source of providing water to the short term. Short term, I mean for the next 30 to 35, 40 years, to go back here into this part of Williamson County that is really just prime for growth. So that's kind of the puzzle that we're trying to build. By digging a series of Trinity wells and bringing in anywhere from 10 to 15,000 acre feet of water into this area, it allows us to further figure and take many, many years to figure out how you're either going to tap into the Carrizo or build additional reservoirs. One of the two has to happen. We either have to build reservoirs or we've got to have access to more groundwater. This is the authority's East Williamson County Water Treatment Plant that we purchased back in '05 from the city of Taylor. This barn is actually what we purchased from the city of Taylor, and it's an all-inclusive small water treatment plant with 7.5 MGD. I'm sorry, 5.5 MGD. It was actually put in a barn because back in the early 90s there was so much crop dusting in the area that they felt like it was important to enclose the facility. And this is the additional facility that we built, another 7.5 MGD of capacity to move water into Williamson County. Right now, customers include the city of Taylor, Jonas Sud, Hutto, and then Taylor has 3 or 4 other small water districts that they provide water to out of that facility. And I'll go back and show you one more thing. As we sit today, this water that we treat here comes all the way over into the corner of Round Rock near Cedar Park, and also comes all the way into Jonas ETJ, just to the far east of Georgetown. So we're already moving this water that was just designated for Taylor back in the early 2000s all the way into central Williamson County. Where we drilled the test well is here in the corner of our property, and it's also where the proposed production well will be. This water will be pumped around the facility into a 30 million gallon storage facility that we built. It allows us to blend the water. The water from the intake from the reservoir comes in here, so we have to move this water around to this location also, so we get proper blending, and then the water leaves the terminal storage here and goes into the facility. So this really allows us to conjunctively use both water sources. Right now, today, Lake Granger's still in the flood. We wouldn't be pumping groundwater. But in 2011, when I was visiting with you all about chasing water because we didn't have the new intake, we may have been at times primarily on groundwater. So it allows us the best of both worlds. It increases our firm yield and allows us to add more customers to the facility that are going to treat and distribute that water throughout Williamson County. Right now, we're negotiating a contract with Lone Star Regional Utility Authority. They'll be the retail provider for that water. that'll go all the way to I-35 to that Gerald Schwertner area, take care of Gerald Schwertner, Florence, Bartlett, Granger, a lot of that part of the county that's certainly going to experience growth. This is the well. I can have Mark come up and talk a little bit more about the well if anybody has any questions. It basically has a stainless steel casing. It goes down about 2,900 to 3,200 feet. We're looking at about 4,800 gallons per minute. 2,800 gallons per minute, which is about 4,800 acre feet a year, should we put it into full production.
Run that by me again. 28 what? 4,800?
2,800 gallons per minute. Gets you to about 4,800 acre feet a year. Is that right, Mark?
4,500.
Okay, 4,500. That's why I bring the engineers in. 4,500 acre feet, 2,800 gallons per minute.
Is there a groundwater district?
There is not a groundwater district in Williamson County. Yet. I don't speak for the county, but I know they're adamantly opposed. We went out for bid. These are what the bids came in for the drilling of the production well. Lane Christensen Company came in low bid 2,900 gallons per minute. 2,900,000. Lane Christensen is also the company that drilled the test well for us, and they did an excellent job.
Are they also in Burleson County?
I don't know if Lane is in Burleson County. They're a very large company, and they drill wells all over the state. Okay. Should you approve it, our notice to proceed will be in September of 2015, and it'll take us about 30 months to be in production for this well, and that's a really long time. But because we've had so many issues with pumping projects with pump stations and pumps, once this well is complete and we're getting water out of the well, then we're going to design the pump and have extensive pump testing done so that we can make sure when we get this very expensive pump in place, it works.
Is this one well?
Yes, sir, this is one well.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the scope of work for each one of those, for these bids? I know the scope of work would be the same on all of them, but are we just talking about punching the hole? What goes into the scope of work that they're bidding on?
The well contractor will drill a hole to about 3,200 feet.
Is it on?
Is it not? Can you hear it?
Yeah, the better.
The contractor will drill a hole to about 3,200 feet, and then he will construct a well down to that depth, consisting of 24 and 18-inch casing, and then 12-inch production casing for about 700 feet. He will provide all of the discharge piping out to the western side, where it'll connect to a pipe that will be bid later to take it to the reservoir. He'll provide the pump, the motor, all the modeling, all the engineering for the pump. Our folks will do the electrical work. Our folks will do the automation work, but the well driller will be responsible for the performance of the well and the well pump.
So we have additional cost for the electrical on top of these.
Yes, sir.
How much?
About $350,000 for the electrical and the automation.
Okay, so we add $350,000 to each one of to the prevailing bid.
Correct.
And then that's to deliver the performing well delivered to what location?
On the well site, there will be a connection of the well discharge piping to another project later that will deliver the water to the terminal storage
reservoir. Okay, so this is right on location, right at the same site. Okay.
Right on the well pad.
Thank you.
Director Masterson had a question a moment ago.
And directors, let me be very clear. This is 2.9 plus 10% contingency of a $30 million project over the next 20 years to put 4 wells into place to purchase the property to get the water to the East Williamson County location. This is just a small piece of a much bigger project. And this also does not include, as Mark alluded to, the actual piping around our facility to get the water into the terminal storage. We have another 30 months to design that and bring that back to the board for approval.
So you're bringing this to us now because you need approval to get the well started?
To start the well, yes.
Okay.
Have we not purchased the land?
We are still evaluating other sites for potential wells. But this well will be dug on existing BRA property.
How many acres do we need for that?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, this is the existing BRA property, and here's the 300 by 300 area where we're going to be drilling the well. Future well sites could be anywhere from 2 to 5 acres. 2 is the minimum. 5 would be ideal.
And like in Burleson County, the Post Oak Savannah, it's 2 acre feet per year per acre.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no
groundwater. Those restrictions aren't here.
Can they put it in after the fact if they want?
They could, and if we didn't have historical use, then we might have an issue. Dave? Yes, sir.
Okay, Dave, you know I'm the strongest opponent of finding underground water in this project. But you're sitting here telling me that this well's going to make 4,800 acre feet per year, right?
Yes, sir.
At our rate of $65, that's $312,000 per year income.
70.
Huh?
70.
70, okay. 300 and, yeah. So this is a 10-year payout per well, roughly. 10 or 12.
Director Masterson, as David mentioned, this is a $30 million project that we'll construct over about a 15 to 20-year period that will bring somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15,000 acre feet of water available to us at the East Williamson County plant. The beauty of having a water supply system like we have is that when you finance and the liquidity and the leverage that water supply system gives us, for example, this fiscal year, we have over 300,000 acre feet of water under our system rate, or priced at our system rate. This is a water supply system project. We fold these costs into that system rate. And even though the cost per acre foot, amortized cost per acre foot of this $30 million project is somewhere in the $300 to $350 an acre foot range when you amortize it out over 35 years. Mm-hmm. When you embed it into our water supply system, the cost that we pass on to all our water supply system customers is spread over 300 to 400,000 acre feet of water and just not over the 10 or 12,000.
Okay.
It becomes a very affordable.
Yeah, well, that clears my muddled mind because I'm sitting here thinking, well, you know, I'm strongly in favor of this project, but also where at the end of the tunnel does it start paying for itself?
And this is what we're starting to see.
Yeah.
The Allens Creek Reservoir, for example, 100,000 acre feet. Amortized cost is probably a little bit north of $200 an acre foot. This one is probably one of the next least expensive on a cost per acre foot basis. When you get into a brand new reservoir or desalinization, you're talking about $500, $600, $700, $800, $1,000 an acre foot to develop those types of projects sometime in the future.
Sure. And this well's cased to 700 feet, you say?
Cased to 700.
Cased down to 700 feet?
We're cased to about 2,700 feet, and then we're open hole from there to about 3,200. Screen hole.
Just regular pipe casing?
Standard steel.
Not cement?
No. Cement grounded. Steel pipe, cement grounded, and stainless steel from 2,700 down to 3,200 where the water-bearing stratum is.
Dr. Rankin.
I just want to make sure I understand. So then the existing customers are subsidizing this because they're going to pay more than they would without this project. And so the people that are going to benefit from this project are being subsidized.
Correct.
And it works out right now because this is not a lot of acre feet, and there's a whole bunch of acre feet over here. But as this goes forward and your incremental costs of new water go up, these people over here are going to be subsidizing. It's like the numbers change is in terms of this number of acre feet can afford to subsidize this because it's not very many acre feet. But then as you continue to have these projects going forward, we're not going to be producing a whole lot of new water at $70 an acre foot because that's what comes out of the Brazos, and this other is going to be not infinitely, greatly more expensive, the new sources.
But just like the Allens Creek project will not benefit directly Williamson County or Bell County, which is where this groundwater will ultimately end up. But the system rate customers in Williamson County and Bell County will subsidize Allens Creek just as the lower basin customers that will access that Allens Creek water will cross-subsidize the other projects that we have going on.
I think if you look at customers out of, I think Allens Creek benefits Bell County, but if you look at customers that take water out of Lake Aquila, Lake Proctor, and just Lake Georgetown, Allens Creek doesn't benefit them. But in their system rate going forth in the future, they will pay for that project. And that's just the definition of having a system where you roll all those costs into each unit. Yes, sir.
And I think there's a higher responsibility that we have here too, and that is we obviously have a need to produce as much water as we can for the entire region, for the entire system, and be as responsible as we can in terms of the cost. But economic growth and supplying that economic growth wherever in the region is really our highest responsibility. We just need to make sure we're doing it as efficiently as possible. Am I right?
Yes, sir. And that's why we later on today will talk to you about the next 5 years specifically in terms of projects, and the next 25 to 30 years as well. And we'll show you some implications of how these projects, when they come on, what that does to our system rate, what we try to do to mitigate it.
Do other water districts, and I should say river authorities and water districts, do they have a system rate, or are they large enough that, because at some time in our past, did we not have a specific rate for different areas?
Up until
we decided it was unmanageable?
Up until 1992, every contract that we had was different. And then when we tried to establish a higher rate to underwrite a very specific project, some customers disagreed with that approach, and we went to the courthouse and negotiated out a settlement. But that's what created our system rate approach right now.
And the LCRA does have a system rate.
That's typical.
Yeah.
Some river authorities do project-specific financing, and that entire cost is levied against the specific users that take advantage of that project. Others, again, like LCRA, have a system rate. Ours works very well for us from a financial leveraging standpoint because our basin is so large.
Right. Other questions? The resolution includes the 2.9 that I showed you plus 10% for our change orders, contingencies like that, so we don't have to come back to the board if we have any change order. This is pretty customary for construction type projects.
Read the resolution, please, sir.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager CEO to negotiate and enter into a contract with Lane Christensen Company for construction of the Trinity Aquifer Production Well in an amount not to exceed $3,221,504.
Heard the resolution. Motion to adopt. Tallis. Second by Tesh. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Belt?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Creel?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Mackey?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action on Texas Water Development Board Regional Water Planning Contract by David Collingsworth, Central and Lower Basin Regional Manager.
Members of the board, as you're aware, obviously the state has different regions for the state water plan. The Region G is the region that Water Development Board has asked the Brazos River Authority to be the administrator. So we kind of manage the projects and coordinate the meetings and coordinate the activities and do it out of house here at the BRA. And it's time again to renew that contract and get money from the Water Development Board and spend that money as far as the Region G planning process goes forward in the future. So what we're looking for is authority to enter into a contract with the Water Development Board for the next phase of planning dollars, and then also to take some of those dollars, $157,000 of the Water Development Board's money, and enter into a contract with HDR for the continued planning of Region G. Any questions, comments?
Okay, you've heard the resolution. Hear a motion?
Just read it first.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, as administrative agent for the Brazos G Regional Water Planning Group to negotiate and execute the regional water planning agreement with the Water Development Board for $187,800. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, as administrative agent for the Brazos G Regional Water Planning Group to negotiate and execute a professional service agreement for an amount up to $157,748 with HDR, Inc. to complete the task identified in the Regional Water Planning Agreement scope of work.
Okay, now you've heard the resolution. I hear a motion. Okay, Carolyn, second. Please poll the board, please, for a vote.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 12, report and possible discussion on the Clean Rivers Program Basin Highlights, report by Tiffany Morgan, Environmental and Compliance Manager. Tiffany?
At your seat you found this morning, we provided each one of you a copy of the annual Basin Highlights report that we do in compliance with the Texas Clean Rivers Program. It is very similar to last year's report, however, we covered a different portion of the basin with it as far as doing watershed assessments that should help us when we come into having to do the 5-year Basin Summary Report, which is the intense water quality data analysis, trending, and modeling report we do every 5 years for the program. So you have that. If you have any questions at a later date, send them to Phil and we'll get them answered for you. Just a quick summary for those of you who have questions on impairments. This is a map showing the current impairments in the Brazos River Basin according to the 2014 draft Texas Integrated Report that TCEQ submits to EPA. This report has not been approved by EPA yet. As you can see, we still battle the bacteria standards on the small streams, but those are slowly being resolved through reassessing those water quality standards on a stream-by-stream basis. And if I'd shown you this map about 3 years ago, it would have been a lot worse with the purple, so we are working through those. We do have a few dissolved oxygen issues on isolated, again, very small streams. And then we are working through a pH... Where's the laser point? pH issue on Lake Somerville that we've been working on for several years trying to understand. It appears to be an internal loading issue that leads to algal blooms that then leads to the pH problem, but there is no real good solution for that lake right now. Yes, sir.
Can you give us a little more detail so we can see where some of these locations are? I mean, Is that all you have? If it's all you have, that's
That's
fine.
all I have for the moment, but we can certainly do that, and I can provide it to Phil, and he can and send it out to you.
Can you, those reservoirs to the northwest of, those tributaries, those rivers,
Right here?
no, northwest of Austin,
Northwest of
Williamson County,
This is...
can you just name some of those?
Brushy Creek
Okay,
is one of them. This is the San Gabriel.
it's the South San Gabriel or north?
It's that San Gabriel below Lake Ranger.
Okay,
And then this one is the North San Gabriel.
okay, thank you.
And then that is Willis Creek that flows into Lake Ranger.
Okay, thank you. And so the issues in the purple is what exactly?
Bacteria, elevated E. coli.
And that comes from?
That can come from any variety of things. It can come from runoff from wildlife. Pet waste in urban areas is generally the major component. We can get feral hog, wild deer, duck populations. You can also
discharge.
You can also get wastewater treatment plant discharge, depending on the compliance level of the facility.
So, do you have any more data to tell us where some of this is coming from in each? You have to have that in order to solve the problem, do you not?
Yes, you do, and we have not gotten to that level yet on those streams. There is a project going on. It is not a BRA project looking at Brushy Creek. City of Round Rock is conducting that. We've offered our assistance, but as of yet they have not requested our assistance. Trying to determine, and they are focusing mainly on urban waste sources, mainly the high development of residential development along that stream. But it is also a heavily wastewater dominated stream. The two Round Rock facilities, however, their compliance is very good as far as discharges, so they are not a highly likely source. I can't speak for the other dischargers on that stream.
What danger to animals or human beings does this pose?
Animals, it generally does not seem to have a negative impact on. Humans, depending on your health status and what else may be in there, E. coli is just our indicator that there is some sort of mammal-based fecal pollution.
So it's not something you can swim in, is that correct? Or what about eating fish?
I would not.
Anything that's
Yeah.
treated water, as in a swimming pool, is not a...
I'm asking for a little more specificity than that. Should you eat fish out of it?
Fish should not be a problem out of it.
There should not be a problem with that?
Fish should not be a problem out of it. But that is the Texas Department of Health's statement, and that is the best statement that David just said. Any untreated surface water is potentially at risk on any given day because you don't know what critter has been through there right before you.
Okay, thank you.
Dissolved oxygen, what's the problem? Too much?
Dissolved oxygen is usually too little. We're warm. We have a lot of clear, flat streams. The warmer the water, the less oxygen it can hold. Algae in some areas can also be a culprit. But what we have learned over the years, and we have participated in some studies, and another presentation I'll make in a minute, we're asking permission to do another one, have discovered that Texas fish and aquatic organisms are very well adapted to our environment, and so there is a chance to uncouple your dissolved oxygen standard and your aquatic life standard, which have always been tied together in the past. And we're finding that in a lot of these small prairie streams, the communities can tolerate a lower dissolved oxygen level and still be a very healthy, vibrant, diverse community. And so that's what is slowly working on. I keep hitting. Duck Creek up here is one of those where there is no known algal problem. Davidson Creek is another one where they're just very small, very shallow, sun-exposed streams where it's probably just naturally that way. No major indicator of pollution to lead us to think that's the cause behind the DO.
And pH, is that too much acid or too much base?
pH on the only water body we have is Somerville with a pH problem, and it's not That one, it fluctuates. The state water quality standards has 6.5 to 9 is the range that surface water should be in. And in Lake Somerville, it's a very unique situation. It busts both of them from time to time. It can be too high or too low. And that's where we're really looking at, there is no major nutrient input that we can find in that area. There's not a significant amount of ranching or agriculture around it. There's not a significant load of discharges either. And it seems to be an internal, out of the sediments of the reservoir is where the nutrients are coming that feeds the algae. Then the algae blooms are driving the pH swings. Because you can see that big swing within 24 hours as it switches from photosynthesis to respiration.
Since that's a core of engineers dam, is it our water and we need to address it? Or does the Corps treat it?
The Corps has, for all practical purposes, not been active in water quality in our basin for some time. It is predominantly actually a TCEQ issue that we, through the Clean Rivers program, have been helping them work on. They are really the ones with the enforcement arm to actually go out and do something about it. But in this case, there doesn't seem to be much that can be done other than try to build the case that it is a natural occurrence and try to work with EPA to remove it from the impairment list, because otherwise it does not appear to be impairing the fish population of the reservoir or causing any other problems.
Thank you.
More questions? And then same thing with concerns. However, you'll see we have a lot of nutrient concerns in the basin, which is not unexpected given the highly rural and agricultural basis. We are waiting on nutrient standards from TCEQ. However, that is a very long and involved process for them to adopt and have standards approved by EPA. At some point, I do anticipate we will move some of these concerns to the impairment status. There are projects, the Leon, this area right here, which is almost all green, there are active projects through a watershed protection plan that we started, then passed off to the AgriLife folks they are actively working with the agricultural communities up there to try to improve practices and reduce some of those impacts. They're also doing some work with septic tank replacements and working with some of the smaller wastewater treatment facilities to help them improve their treatment process also. But that will probably be in the next 10 years, start to become more of a pressing problem for us, provided TCEQ can get through the EPA process in 10 years, which may or may not be possible given other states that have gone before us. If there's no more questions, I'll move on to the next presentation, please.
Agenda item number 13. Discussion and possible action on Clean Rivers contract for FY 2016 and 2017 by Tiffany Morgan, Environmental and Compliance Manager.
This is the annual contract, or biannual contract I see every 2 years about. This is our agreement with TCEQ to perform our portion and our responsibilities under the Texas Clean River Act, which basically mandates the Texas Clean Rivers program be administered. Main goals is to do comprehensive water quality planning management, ensure state has safe, clean water supply, and requires ongoing assessment of water quality. And that is our main function, is this ongoing assessment of water quality. We are the chief data horse for the TCEQ in the basin, and the Clean Rivers Act does mandate we participate in that TCEQ works with us on these programs. The contract total for the next 2 years is $796,318. That funds the bulk of our water quality data collection activities. It does not require any match, and the effective date will start September 1st. Yes, sir.
Sorry, maybe a stupid question, but data collection, is that literally just somebody walking down to various parts of the stream, collecting water and bringing it back to the lab?
There are different levels of data collection. That's it in the highest 30,000 level nutshell. It is a little more intense than that. We do readings within the stream, measure flow. We have what they call multi-probe instrument that we take out, take instantaneous readings. Sometimes we'll deploy those instruments and collect 24 hours worth of data or 1 month worth of data on the stream, which is really helpful in seeing different fluctuations. Also, we do take a series of different water quality samples and bring them back to the lab, and the lab runs the analysis. And then all that data gets packaged up and we transfer that to TCEQ. And then that eventually gets transferred on to EPA for Federal Clean Water Act compliance. And under part of this too, we also do some intense biological data collections, fish, aquatic insects, aquatic plant assessments. With the advent of the potential for some endangered freshwater mussels, we've added in freshwater mussel surveys and also intense habitat surveys to make sure that if we're seeing a problem in some areas, it just explains because the base habitat wouldn't be there versus is there a bigger problem leading to a less than a desirable community in that area.
Can we do that in-house, or we contract that out?
We do that all in-house.
How many people in your?
I have 6 people that go out in the field and do that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And they cover most of the basin every month.
Tiffany, one of the things that was very helpful to me, we had some issues about water quality. I think it was temperature that I needed, but the data that the BRA has is very comprehensive and it's user-friendly. You can get it, and I think that if you have some real questions about water quality in your area, you probably can get with Tiffany and get some of that kind of information because it's open for the public to get, and it's comprehensive because it's over many, many years. And so I think you all do a fantastic job and very helpful when I needed some data.
If there's no other questions, I'll move to the resolution.
Please read your resolution.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into a contract with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ, whereby TCEQ will provide funding in the amount of $796,318 to the Brazos River Authority to perform water quality monitoring services and other activities under the Texas Clean Rivers Program.
For the resolution, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Ball, second. Mackey. Sarah, I'm sorry. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action on Upper Navasota Aquatic Life Assessment Contract by Tiffany Morgan, Environmental and Compliance.
This is a project that TCEQ approached us about that they would like our staff to do for them. It's mainly, again, addressing a few of those concerns that were on the list. Primarily, their concern is the dissolved oxygen impairment on Duck Creek, and it's been impaired since 2012, but most of the data that impairment was based on is older historical data. They have approached us to do an aquatic life assessment to see if that is one of the streams that is a potential for an uncoupling of the aquatic life standard and the dissolved oxygen standard, to see if they can lower the standard, and also because the data is historical data. Is that data still good? Is there still issues in that area? And then they asked us to tackle Lake Mejia, Springfield Lake, and Navasota above Lake Limestone, which all have concerns for dissolved oxygen, but the data there is extremely old, and they'd like us to do 24-hour DO sampling to confirm or refute those historical concerns and try to eliminate some concerns and impairments from the integrated report. This is a map showing you that's Lake Mejia. It's Lake Springfield and the stretch of the Navasota they're concerned about, and then down here is Duck Creek. The contract will be $100,000 with no match requirement, and again, it would be effective September 1, 2015. Any questions? Yes.
What was your question, Sal?
If that was, again, in-house with Tiffany and her staff conducting this.
That's what my question was. Do you have adequate staff to be able to do what you currently do, and then is this as well?
Yes.
Now, why would TCEQ do this? Someone made them aware that there was a problem there?
They have been under intense pressure from the EPA about the duration of time that certain impairments have been allowed to ride on our list or on the list for the basin. And it's not just our basin. A lot of things get out there and sit. And so this was something that is, we should be able to accomplish it in no more than 2.5 years. It's quick, easy study. I certainly have the staff trained to do it, and TCQ doesn't have the staff to hit them all in-house themselves. So they have, at least in our basin, started asking us to do some of these projects for them from time to time. If there's no more questions, I'll move to the resolution.
Please read your resolution.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into a contract with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, TCEQ, whereby TCEQ will provide the authority in the amount of $100,000 to the Brazos River Authority to perform an aquatic life assessment on Duck Creek and 24-hour dissolved oxygen assessments on Lake Mejia, Lake Springfield, and the Navasota River above Lake Limestone.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Second. Gene. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Belt?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Creel?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Mankey?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Tesh?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes.
Agenda item number 15, discussion and possible action on laboratory information management system software. Contract by Tiffany Morgan, Environmental and Compliance Manager.
A laboratory information management system is a software-based tool that we use in the laboratories. It's key to our function and management of our data. In our current LIMS, all surface water and wastewater compliance data is stored and managed through this system, and that data is used by various BRA departments to do their regulatory reporting to TCEQ and other state agencies as applicable. Our current LIMS was purchased in 2002 and is based on legacy system software that IT has said if at some point in time in the future it crashes, the odds of them being able to recover are slim. It's inefficient with what's available in today's market, provides us very poor communication tools with the operations staff, doesn't consolidate all our record-keeping needs into one location, and lacks our security features are lacking that would allow us to do things we need to improve communication with our customers and or our operations staff. So we went through a fairly intense process of reviewing other LIMS systems that are available and have settled on the LabVantage LIMS, which is a GSA contracted LIMS system. The company's been in business for quite some time in industry and pharmaceutical worlds. System capabilities are vastly improved as far as what it offers us, and even with the existing capabilities, they're much improved over what we currently have. So it should allow us to be much more efficient in the laboratories and with our communications with our customers and our operations staff. One of the key things our operations staff has wanted for one time is an alert whenever they exceed a permit limit or they have some levels of concern for them that tell them when something's off in the plant. And right now, we have to have a lab tech stop and go hunt somebody down to tell them because we don't have the ability to ping their cell phone, send them an email, alert them that way. So hopefully this new system will be very helpful and make the lab more efficient, and we hope with it that we can continue to keep the staff levels where they are. If there's any questions. Yes, sir. Ma'am.
Contracts with TCEQ and whatnot, were you anticipating this equipment would be used in our tasks that we do for them?
This equipment will be used in those tasks to store the data. This is also the primary mechanism which we turn around and then use to submit the data reports to TCEQ. We submit our data electronically to their system. This will allow us right now, it's a fairly cumbersome step where we have to export to Excel, do a lot of manipulations in Excel, then transfer, whereas with this system we can set it up and do the transfers directly without having that extra staff time. And hopefully the same thing should be in play for the wastewater operations. We hadn't quite worked out the mechanism since the folks who do those wastewater reports don't directly report to me, but we're working on getting those to where we can hopefully automatically send the data to them. They're doing the same process. They dump to Excel, do a series of manipulations to get it in the format TCEQ wants, and then send it on. But we have provided all those reports to LabVantage, and they said setting that process up is not a difficult process.
So in assessing what we were going to receive from TCEQ for our contracts, did you build any of this cost into those?
This cost with our laboratories, we do a cost per sample, and all the costs and expenses we have related to those limbs gets built into those calculations. So every time they get charged for a sample, they're paying a piece of this price. There's no more questions.
Please read your resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into a contract with LabVantage Solutions Incorporated to purchase a new laboratory information management system software. The total project costs for the software installation, testing, and migration of historical data shall not exceed $267,074.
What do you propose to
There's
be
the
the life of
resolution.
this?
Motion to adopt. Sorry.
So I had a question.
No, I'm sorry. Is that my fault? I was asking what is the useful life that you project?
We would hope that we can make it 10 years.
Really?
We've made this existing one stretch a little further than that. Just depends on how quick technology changes and if they change out from underneath us. As far as for the laboratories, it should easily last us 7+ years. It'd be the IT back end that would be the concern. Do I need to reread?
Okay, no, that's fine. You've heard the resolutions, a motion to adopt. Jean and Sarah. Please poll the board, please.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams.
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belts,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
Agenda item number 16, workshop and possible discussion on strategic plan and financial forecast for fiscal year 2016 by Jim Forte, Planning and Development Manager, Interim Chief Financial Officer.
Get this out of the way, and then whenever we get near the time for lunch, which will be kind of right here, which will be right now, it's due to be served at noon, so we'll go to then and then break to go and do the close at that point in time.
After this one.
Our mission, the mission statement that was adopted by this board back in 2007, I think it's still appropriate now. Revenues, our Our system brings in about $55.5 million, at least it will in 2016. 16.4 of that is projects that we manage for other people. Essentially, it's a cost pass-through process. Largest one being the Brushy Creek system that we operate for City of Round Rock and others. We recently picked up this Dosher Farm operation, which is one of the Temple Belton entities. The Temple or Belton, David? Temple, okay. In terms of the balance of our revenues, here's a comparison from last year to this year. System rate revenue is going up $2.1 million. That's the result of a utility contract that converted about 25,000 acre-feet of water at Lake Limestone, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But you can see that down here at the bottom, 2016 budget, just a little over $2 million worth of additional revenue, and just coincidentally, these kind of wash in and out to where that $2.1 million becomes pretty significant. Here's where that income is derived from, and I'll talk to you about our system rate. In 2001, our system rate was $26 an acre foot, and that was about a quarter of the water that we had under contract, and it produced about a quarter of our system water supply system revenue. If you go on to 2005, the system rate by then was up to $45 an acre foot and represented about 35% of our water sales. And here now we see in 2016 at the proposed rate of $70.50, almost half of our water will be at system rate. Again, there'll be a contract, and here's how that breaks down by the various types of contracts. Again, here's about the 25,000 acre feet that went up, and it's a utility contract. Two-tier contracts are the largest legacy contracts that we have. And if you look at fiscal 2017, another 83,000 acre feet of water expires. That's the contract that we have with Luminant for the construction of Lake Granbury. And right now they're paying a very nominal cost for water. However, you have to take into consideration that they paid the entire debt service for the construction of that reservoir from beginning in about 1970 up through the retirement of that debt about 2 years ago. So it's not that they got this water always at $50.60. They paid 100% of the cost of that reservoir, and then we got a portion of that water back that we sold at our rates, while they have this 83,000 acre feet that they can use at their facilities up there, primarily Comanche Peak 1 and 2. But that will expire next year. And then you see about 5 years before we have anything else that's going to convert. Operating expenses, again, the cost reimbursables, and each one of these cost reimbursable contracts, our staff goes out and meets with those customers and goes through a very detailed presentation on what is in those budgets and what do we contemplate that we're going to have to do at those facilities. And they are, again, 100% responsible for the cost, and the rest of this is what is the responsibility of our water supply system customers. Just kind of breaking it down. Right at 45% of our budget in 2016 will be salaries and wages and benefits. The only other single item that we have is in double digits is debt service, and that's debt service not only on our bonds, but also the contracts, the construction contracts, and the storage contracts that we have with the Corps of Engineers for the conservation storage in the Corps reservoirs. Down here, we also pay the Corps of Engineers for some O&M costs at those reservoirs, and down here is where we pay for the water that we buy from LCRA, 25,000 acre feet that goes into Williamson County. These two expense activities, in addition to some others, are folded into what we call a line item called Federal Reservoir and Water Contracts, and I'll talk about that again in a second. In terms of compensation for this next fiscal year, several years ago we adopted an ECI-based salary adjustment. It's the ECI, and it has numerous components and categories. We use the state and local government section for just salaries and wages to recommend the 1.6, and this is based on what that index was in December of this past year. We start preparing our budget in March, and so that is the most current adjustment index that we have. Benefits, Monica already talked about the health care earlier, about 13.7% of increase there, and a net decrease of 2 full-time positions. Again, we talked about that earlier. We have a declining number of staff. We spread our health insurance costs over that declining staff, and that's what causes us to be in a situation that we are right now. Breaking the budget down into major expenses, you see that next year we'll spend right at $8 million, a little more than $8 million maintaining and operating our reservoirs. East Williamson County, David Collinsworth talked about that earlier in terms of the water treatment plant there, our West Central Brazos pipeline, and we will be setting rates for the West Central Brazos pipeline as we have the last couple of years, but you know, I think you're all aware that we're currently in negotiations that we might shed that asset potentially even before the fiscal year starts. Again, the Federal Reservoir and Water Contracts, that includes the operating payments that we make to the federal government for the conservation storage, as well as the water we pay to LCRA and some other things. And then here's what keeps us running the internal costs of our operation, about $32.3 million in fiscal 2016. Included in that $32 million is about almost $2 million worth of ongoing projects and studies. The majority of these don't create an asset, they're just a study, but they are long-term studies. So since even though we don't capitalize them, we feel it's appropriate to embed them in our operating costs. We perform volumetric surveys on reservoirs on a very regular basis in cooperation with the Texas Water Development Board. This is a fully grant-funded project here, the Lower Basin Floodplain Study, and you can see some others. We're looking at some feasibility studies and that type of thing as well. Capital projects for, let's see, where am I? Yeah. Capital projects for this next fiscal year, again, forecasting about $19.3 million, and we've already talked about a couple of them today and a couple of them recently. The groundwater project that David Collinsworth, that you authorized that contract for, we think of the amount that you authorized, we could cash flow as much as $2.9 million in fiscal 16. Our system operation permit, and we'll brief you on that in executive session, but you can see these other projects for, again, example, the 3 reservoirs at the dams spending about $8 million in capital costs, as well as the $8 million to keep them running. One of the things that we will ultimately talk to you about in detail is the Brazos Basin Water Master. This is the first year of the Water Master, and we've got some things that we're going to need to do to accommodate that process and our customers. Bless you. Debt service, again, talked about the federal reservoirs, the bonds that we have outstanding. Our debt service next year for just our bonds will be a little over $3 million. Federal reservoirs will pay about another $2.7 million, and these are the balances that will be outstanding. Williamson County raw water line costs are paid for by those customers. So here's comes how we come up with what we need to make. Our O&M costs are going up about $3 million. That's predominantly made up of the salary costs and the health insurance costs that we talked about earlier. That's about $1 million of it. In 2016, we will be migrating what we call our reservoir. What's the RSMU stand for?
Reservoir System Management.
Reservoir System Maintenance Unit. That's a group of guys up at Possum Kingdom that we formed that group back several years ago to replace all the gates at Possum Kingdom, all 9 of them, and we financed that through our capital program. All that work has been completed. Now these guys are doing maintenance. It's not appropriate to continue to charge their costs against our capital side. We're not creating another asset. We're just maintaining that asset. So we have moved them over fully into the water supply system. Fiscal 2016 is almost $1 million. But we've completed that. We've embedded it into our rates. And about $1.9 million additional revenue. Some of that offset by the fact that we converted that one contract, and again, we'll convert that another contract next year, and that will help mitigate some of that cost.
So those are contracts, not employees?
No, they're employees. They're full-time employees.
Oh, they are, okay.
How many folks you got?
About 16.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you look at when you net all this down, we need to make $23.4 million from our system rate customers, which again is about a $2 million increase from this past fiscal year. And doing the real simplified math, if you need $23.4 million and you got about 330,000 acre feet of water that's subject to system contracts, that's about $70.50 an acre foot, a little over 1% increase. And that's pretty much on line with what we forecast last year and when we did our 5-year forecasting. Let's look at what that does to our bottom line. Fiscal 2015, the one we're in right now, we started with a little over $46 million, about a $5.5 million surplus this year. Capital expenditures that we'll be making, again, the Costello Island revenue, so ending 2015 with a slight increase in fund balance. You take that number, the budget assumes about an $800,000 surplus from operations, and that essentially represents the coverage factor that we apply on our debt service on bonds that are subject to coverage. For every $1 million of debt service that we pay, we generate $1.3 million in total revenue, and that excess $300,000 then goes over to our reserves. And that's to make sure that the municipal bond community and the bond rating agencies see that we're being prudent in setting our rates and that we actually recover excess revenue. The projects that we just talked about, and fund balance $28.8 million. This is before the Costello, I'm sorry, the PK divestiture that was alluded to earlier, as well as we traditionally underspend our capital projects, although again, there's a couple of these in here that probably will spend pretty aggressively this year, so hopefully we'll see more activity in our capital side. Yes, sir.
On the ground flood control, is that our total commitment to that, or is that included?
I'll defer to Mike McClendon.
Yes, sir. That's actually been a placeholder for the last 2 years.
Is it Corgan? They're not going to reimburse us, are they?
No, sir. There's a percentage. We pay 35%, and then they pay the remainder.
Yeah, so that's our 35%, 1.6 million. Right. Sometime.
Hopefully we have a meeting coming up probably the next month or two.
Well, I've been here 5 years. I've never seen it happen yet.
Some of us have been here longer than that. Waiting the same time. Here's our buckets again. The $28 million will be divided into our working capital, which is calculated as 90 days of operations. That's the number that again the financial management community thinks is prudent. We have about $500,000 to cover deductibles on our self-insurance for vehicles and other losses. A contingency fund of $5 million, and then everything else kind of works its way down into our rate stabilization fund. And when we do our long-range discussion here in a few minutes, we'll see how we dispatch that rate stabilization fund to the benefit of our customers. Bringing it all down to the bottom line, Cost reimbursable, again, breaks even. There's a modest benefit to the water supply system in terms of some overhead that we charge over to those contracts, as well as some management fees that we gather. But essentially, they break even. So it's really our water supply system that you focus on. Through 2016, again, $28.8 million. Compared to our mandatory, the board adopted these reserve policies back in 2005, 4. I've been here too long. But anyway, well within what the financial community is looking for. Talk a little bit about the Water Master. That's kind of up in the air. We know that the Water Master's budget is going to be $800,000. They are going to put a 15% discount on their billings, or a premium on their billings, and they're actually going to bill out $943,000 for the Water Master. They don't, and this is, they say, based on their experience in other basins. Of course, hadn't been another Water Master developed in over a decade. But our share of that $942,000 is $410,000. We're going to fund it out of our reserves for this year because we're not really certain. We know it's going to pass on to the system rate customers. That's without question. We have a number of other legacy contracts that have clauses in them. There's one, for example, that says if there's a water master in the basin, we'll be charged accordingly. There's others that say that if there's a regulatory or legislatively imposed cost on the BRA, then that contract, in addition to its formula, can allow that expense. So we're looking at our contracts this year, going to be talking to those customers that are affected by it. So what we thought was appropriate is that we would pay the 2016 estimated cost out of our reserves, and then in 2017 and any year in the future, we will bill our customers in arrears for the cost that we incurred the prior year. We won't bill them we had one question when we did these customer meetings basin-wide. Does that mean you're going to bill us for 2016, 2017, and 2017? No. We're going to bill you for 2016 and 2017, and we'll just always be in arrears. So that's our budget. You all received one of these, and certainly it's got much more detail in it than we covered here, and the staff and I can answer any questions that you might have about what's going on in the operating budget.
There's no questions. We'll go to agenda item number 17.
I'm still on. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, you're still on.
I was just catching a breath. Five-year forecast. Again, we assume that our non-system rate contracts will continue on. We'll look at that in our long-range forecast here in a few minutes. Grants, which are predominantly based on the majority of those costs are salaries and wages, so we use the same type of an indicator and indices to increase those as we do others. And then, again, we talked about interest income earlier, and quite frankly, I don't see interest rates going up any dramatically over the next 5 years. They may come up a little bit. Oh, and expenses. We forecast those based on a variety of indices. We just don't take the CPI or the producer price index, the big number, and apply that to our budget. We apply ECI to the salary and wage accounts. We apply a petroleum-based indices to those chemicals that are subject to petroleum. We apply a different indicator to the electricity that we buy. So we don't just throw a CPI number at our budget and calculate it. We use about 6 or 8 different indicators based on the type of activity in our forecasting. Capital plan, again, is waiting on the state water plan to be adopted. And in debt service, we don't assume any more refundings. We've refunded about every dollar of debt that we can that makes sense. However, the 5-year forecast does anticipate that there's a possibility that in 2018, 19, and 20, we may need to issue some debt because we've been buying down our reserves so dramatically by dispatching our rate stabilization fund to keep our rates down for our customers. And then here's the 5 years. Again, there's the target for our 90 days worth of working capital, and again, still well within margin. And then here's what we think our rates will look like over the next 5 years. Nominal increases, and they go up and down based on project schedules and that type of thing. But in reality, probably an average of about 2% a year. Pretty realistic for our customers to anticipate. Put on a different hat. Again, our mission statement, our guiding principles that were adopted by the board in 2017, still go by those. Here's our model that we installed about 10 years ago that still we think is pretty accurate. We take the operating budget, we put the things like the state water plan into it. We look at what that does to the system rate, and then if it makes the system rate go up too dramatically, then we look at using reserves and our fund balance to stabilize that to the advantage of our customers. Here we are today. The initially prepared plans for the regions, and we're predominantly in Region G and Region H, came out in May, but they won't be adopted until November. There's some projects in the 2016 budget, as we talked about those projects earlier, that will end up being in the regional plans, and then the state plan gets adopted by the Water Development Board a year after the regional plans. And again, that's subject to hearings and those types of things. Here's what we were talking about earlier. The green line is system rate. The blue line is non-system rate. We finally cross over in 2016. Here's that 83,000 acre-foot contract that will expire this year and go into the system rate next year. Blue bars up here are two-tier contracts, and we'll show you what that rate is here, I believe. But they were negotiated in the 1992 rate case for 50 years, so they don't expire until 2041 and 2042. Here's the utility contracts that we were talking about again. There's that 25,000 acre feet here, that another 83,000 acre foot there, another one expiring out here as well, about 2026 or so. Capital projects, 2021 through 2031 is going to be a big decade for the Brazos River Authority. Big projects coming on. That's when we contemplate, for example, the construction costs of the Allens Creek Reservoir to occur. And there's what it looks like graphically. This is Allens Creek. The red bars are where we contemplate issuing some debt. The blue bars are where we will continue to use our rate stabilization fund as best as we can. But you can see that ultimately, when you put that much cost into our rate making, it's going to cause this rate to go up. I will say that these forecasts right now do not contemplate the sale of any water under our system operation permit. Until we have that in hand, until we understand what it's going to do, we don't think it's appropriate to be speculative on what our rates are. But once we have that in hand, then you will see this change, I think, pretty dramatically. And that will alter a number of other things in our analysis. So when we make this presentation to you a year from now, these will look dramatically different, I think, than what you're seeing right now. And there is a little bit higher resolution, but again, you can see right around here, 2022, 2023, when we start issuing the debt to support the Allens Creek project, rates will go up. But again, I think the system operation permit actually will take that hump out of it and flatten that line just a little bit. And that's my entire presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'll be willing to try to answer them. That's the end of this agenda item.
All right, sir. Agenda item number 17, discussion and possible action on adoption of fiscal year 2016 annual operating plan and multi-year capital improvement plan by Jim Forte.
I've got a resolution, but I wanted to go to a couple of sections on it to make sure that that the board is fully aware of some things that we're going to be doing. Our contemplation is that when we bill for our water, that the customer pays it in a lump sum. We bill early in the fiscal year, and we receive probably 90% of our income in that first quarter. We do offer the opportunity, however, for customers to pay either quarterly or monthly. When they do that, we charge them a factor that reimburses the BRA for the lost use of that money on an annualized basis, as well as a fee, a very nominal fee for the fact that we've got to cut a second or third or fifth or 12th invoice and the processing it takes and that type of thing. We thought that the board had blessed that methodology and that approach. There's evidence to suggest that back in somewhere between 2005 and 2007, there was discussion with this board, and we talked about what we were going to do. Quite candidly, we can't find an action item where the board said, yeah, go ahead and do that. So this resolution will incorporate us catching up with that methodology, and this language that says that y'all are going to do it. Here is what we do. We take our investment rate that we're making right now on that portfolio, and we look at how much the lost income would have been based on how the payments are made, whether they make payment quarterly or monthly, and there are different factors for both types of payments. But what it does, it makes us whole at the end of the fiscal year, assuming that that income would have been deposited at the very first of the fiscal year. And it means that there's not a subsidy for these people using their money longer than we do. The factor for 2016 would be 2.53. For quarterly payments, and the factor for monthly payments would be 0.085. And what we do is we take that factor, we multiply the outstanding balance by that factor, establish what new quarterly payments would be, and we end up, again, there's an elaborate calculation that makes us whole. Yes, sir.
Approximately, what does it translate to in terms of cost to the customer?
How much do you make off of that, Cheryl? $60,000 a year.
No, I meant in terms of a percent of the portion that they're deferring. I mean, is it like something like 1% or something like that?
Because our savings rate right now is
negligible. It can't be even 1% hardly, can it?
When we had higher interest rates and double-digit interest rates, it could be significant. But with lower investment rates right now, it's nominal. And again,
I mean, with these factor numbers, it's hard to translate that into the cost of money to the customer. It's a detail, but it's got to be around 1%, isn't it? Or not even more than that?
No, it's not going to be 20%. Cheryl Holscher does all our accounts receivable, and
it's also $20 per transaction is what we're counting. So if you were monthly, 12 months, $20 to handle that extra invoice and that extra payment coming back in the process.
I was just trying to translate it into a percentage. So it's okay.
And again,
sorry.
It's nominal. Very few customers adopt that methodology. Like I say, $60,000 income on $24 million worth of billings for system rate or any contract. So.
Jim, is it communicated to the customers? Is it well communicated up front?
Yes. Again, that's what we thought. I mean, in the letter that we send out to every customer every year when we set our rates, there's a couple of paragraphs that talks about what the factor for quarterly and monthly payments will be. We've been sending those letters out for the last 7, 8, 10 years. Like I say, thinking that that back 7 or 8, 10 years ago that you had passed a resolution that agreed to it. We have minutes that show that it was discussed and that everybody thought it was a great idea, but when you go to find a resolution that says, yes, go ahead and do that, we just don't have one in file.
So, Jim, if the customer owes us $100,000 and they defer payment for, instead of all at once, they pay it quarterly.
Correct.
Then how do you apply that 0.085 factor? And what dollar amount does, over and above the $100,000 that they would owe us, does that amount to?
Again, let me defer to Cheryl. Can you use an example and
I mean, it's not 8.5% per annum.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It adds up to be about 11 cents. Matt over here. About 11 cents per acre foot. Yeah.
I'm talking about cost of money to the customer is what I'm talking about. Less than 1%, that's what I thought. All right. I mean, you can't determine that based on this, though, so I just felt like it should be discussed.
If you added that price to the acre foot, it's about 11 cents per acre foot.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Other questions on that topic? And the only other thing that I point out is, again, we're going to set rates for the West Central Brazos because we owe those customers, again, are expecting us to set a rate every year, but there's a potential that these rates may not be applied if we're successful in dealing with the City of Abilene and the Water District out there to acquire the West Central Brazos pipeline. So if there are no other questions, I can read the resolution. Yes, ma'am.
Jim, I do have questions on our projects, and it seems that, each year for, the past couple of years, I can remember that we set, a pretty significant amount aside to spend on projects. But just the information that's in here, we've spent, maybe a third or something of the budget. Are we doing okay on all, I know we have a lot of projects going on, and it seems like we put out a lot of fires, but are we doing okay on those other long-term projects that aren't getting funded in the years that we've approved the budget?
I'd say that we've deferred projects not to where there's a critical issue, but it's just when you're overwhelmed by the correction of processes from the past, it hinders your ability to make progress. Again, we think we've overcome a lot of that. Again, the groundwater project in the Trinity, where we'll spend almost $3 million next year. The Allens Creek project, where at your October meeting, we will bring a contract to you for the 404 permitting activity, which will be $3, $4, $5 million. So I think we've overcome a lot of that. It was just getting over issues that we had to deal with the contractor issues that have been discussed with you in the past, the engineering issues that have been discussed with you in the past. We resolved those, and hopefully we're going to make some progress.
I will tell you, I feel better now today than I felt in the last 5 or 6 years about our ability to make progress. In the closed session, whenever you see where we are on systems operations, whenever you see where we are on Allens Creek, we're making progress. And that's been slow in coming, and we've also had to be deliberate. And there's some folks out there that don't like us very much because we're making them do what they're supposed to do. And so whenever you take that stance, sometimes it impedes rather than helps.
Any other questions?
Read your resolution, please.
Yes, sir. Be it resolved by the Board of Directors of Brazos River Authority that the following fiscal year 2016 annual operating plan and multi-year capital improvement plan be approved and adopted. And be it further resolved that the General Manager / CEO is hereby authorized to make expenditures and enter into contracts for expenditures as listed in the fiscal year 2016 annual operating plan and multi-year capital improvement plan in accordance with the Brazos River Authority's General Operations Practices Policy 2.01, authority and responsibilities of the Board of Directors and General Manager / Chief Executive Officer, and be it further resolved that the General Manager / CEO is hereby authorized to make adjustments in the individual line item amounts of the budget, provided that the total amount expended shall not exceed the total amount authorized for each operating division as follows. Operating budget, water supply, $38,337,816. Cost reimbursable, $16,353,972. Total operating budget, $54,691,788. Capital budget, water supply, $19,276,255. Cost reimbursable, $0. Total capital budget, $19,276,255. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby adopts the multi-year capital improvement plan as presented in the fiscal year 2016 annual operating plan, and be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves and adopts a rate of $70.50 per acre foot of water annually for fiscal year 2016, both the system water rate and the interruptible water rate. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves and adopts a rate of $49.35 per acre foot of water annually for fiscal year 2016 for the agricultural water rate. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves and adopts a methodology for quarterly payments or monthly payments to include a multiplier to be applied to the annual payment to allow the Brazos River Authority to recover interest lost on any unpaid balance, plus a service charge for administrative costs, including but not limited to costs involving the billing, accounting, and collecting for the quarterly or monthly payments. And be it further resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority that the methodology used to determine the multiplier consists of applying the current savings rate the Brazos River Authority would be earning on the funds if paid in full annually to the unpaid balance on a monthly or quarterly schedule to determine lost interest, and that the service charge shall be $20 per invoice to cover additional administrative costs for billing, accounting, and collecting the associated payments. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves and adopts a multiplier and service charge of 0.253 for quarterly payments and 0.085 for monthly payments for fiscal year 2016. And be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves and adopts a fixed rate of $50.44 per acre foot and a variable rate of $116.42 per acre foot for transportation and use of the West Central Brazos Water Distribution System for fiscal year 2016.
You've heard the resolution and motion to adopt.
So moved.
Richard, second. Creel. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott?
Yes.
Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Ball?
Yes.
Director Belt?
Yes.
Director Christensen?
Yes.
Director Christian?
Yes.
Director Creel?
Yes.
Director Johnson?
Yes.
Director Kilgore?
Yes.
Director Mackey?
Yes.
Director Masterson?
Yes.
Director Munson?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Tesh?
Yes.
Director Zaccanino?
Yes. Can I interrupt for just a second? I want to recognize some folks that I should have earlier, and I apologize to them. Michelle Drouar, who is our budget officer, Matt Wheelis, who you've already heard from, who's our accounting manager, and Melissa Anthony, who's our cash and investment manager. These are the folks that put the numbers behind my ability to stand up here and talk to you. And again, I'd just like to acknowledge their contribution to the Brazos River Authority and the effort that we go through every year.
Turnabout's fair play. I think Jim deserves a round of applause too. He jumped in here at the last minute and pulled these folks together.
All right, go back to agenda item number 9. The Board of Directors will conduct a closed meeting and executive session on the following matters. A, to consult with attorney regarding systems operation pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. B, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property in McLennan County pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.072 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. C, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property at Possum Kingdom pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.072 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. D, to deliberate regarding the following positions: General Manager, CEO, Technical Service Manager, Chief Financial Officer, Human Resource Manager, General Counsel, Government and Customer Relations Manager, Upper Basin Regional Manager, Central and Lower Basin Regional Manager, Information Technology Manager, and Planning and Development Manager pursuant to the authority granted by the Section 551.074 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified as Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. With each executive session agenda item, time will be allowed to call the next presenter. During the executive session, we will ask that the public please wait in the break room in order to keep the hallway clear. To keep the meeting moving, the board will conduct the closed session during lunch in the main conference room. Then, upon completing executive session, the board will move back into the boardroom and enter into open session. The Board of Directors will now enter into executive session at 11:50 a.m. and reconvene in the main conference room for the first executive session present. The Board of Directors hereby reconvenes in open session at 1:06 p.m.
We have a resolution coming out of executive session. The following resolution is presented for consideration by the Board of Directors for adoption. Be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority that the General Manager, CEO, is hereby authorized to execute an amendment to the existing contract of Friesen Nichols, Inc. in the amount of $486,000 for a total of $4,136,469. Such amendment to be utilized for costs related to the system operation permit and water management plan, and be it further resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority that the General Manager / CEO is hereby authorized to take any and all actions as deemed appropriate and necessary for furtherance of the system operation permit and water management plan.
Heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Gene and Robert. Got it. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams.
Yes.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Oh, yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tush,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino.
Yes.
All right.
The following resolution is presented for consideration to the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority for adoption at its July 27th, 2015 meeting. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority issued a request for bids dated February 17th, 2015, RFB number 15-05-86 including addenda 1 through 6 thereto, the RFB regarding certain real property owned by Brazos River Authority located above the 1,000-foot contour line at Possum Kingdom Lake in Palo Pinto, Stevens, Young, and Jack Counties, Texas, as more particularly described in RFB, the property. Whereas the Brazos River Authority received 6 bids ranging from $7.6 million to $10.1 million, and whereas the Brazos River Authority received a bid from Patterson PK2 Land Partnership Ltd., and whereas the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority considered all the bids received that met or exceeded the mandatory requirements of the RFB, and also considered the best interest of the Brazos River Authority. And whereas the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority desires to declare that the property is surplus, accept a bid submitted in response to the RFB, and authorize the General Manager, CEO of the Brazos River Authority to negotiate the contract and all other documents necessary to complete the sale of the property to the successful bidder in accordance with the terms of the RFB and the successful bid received by the Brazos River Authority. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby determines that the property is surplus and is not necessary for the business or operations of the Brazos River Authority. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby accepts the bid of Patterson PK2 Land Partnership LTD submitted June 3rd, 2015 in the amount of $10,150,000, the successful bid, subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the RFB and in the successful bid that are consistent with the RFB. And be it further resolved that the General Manager, CEO of the Brazos River Authority is hereby authorized and directed to take any and all actions necessary to negotiate, execute, acknowledge as necessary, and deliver the contract and any and all other necessary, required, or convenient documents with and to the successful bidder and/or the title company in connection with the sale of the property to the successful bidder, including in connection with the closing of such sale, all in conformity with the RFB and with the successful bid received by the Brazos River Authority, provided that such contract and related documents shall be subject to the ratification of the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority after execution by the successful bidder and before closing of the sale. And be it further resolved pursuant to Section 9F of the RFB that General Manager, CEO of the Brazos River Authority is hereby directed to promptly issue a notice of acceptance by the successful bid to Patterson PK2 Land Partnership LTD, the successful bidder.
Heard the resolution, motion to adopt. Tesh? Second. Richard? Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes. Sorry.
Director Ball,
Yes.
Director Belt,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Director Christian,
Yes.
Director Creel,
Yes.
Director Johnson,
Yes.
Director Kilgore,
Yes.
Director Mackey,
Yes.
Director Masterson,
Yes.
Director Munson,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Tesh,
Yes.
Director Zaganino.
Yes.
Turned it off. Turn it back on. Forgive my seat, but I would like to do the reading from here, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. We have deliberated on the general manager, CEO, and we've looked at all of our other people in the area, and we have come up with this resolution. Whereas the general manager, CEO, has consistently performed in an exemplary manner, whereas the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority desires to amend the general manager's CEO's contract to conform with the Brazos River Authority's methods of annually adjusting compensation for all employees, whereas the Brazos River Authority employee-based compensation is subject to an annual employment cost index adjustment at the discretion of the Board of Directors, whereas the Board of Directors, in its discretion, establishes an annual performance-based merit pay budget for employees, which is calculated as a percentage of total payroll. And whereas the Board of Directors desires that the General Manager CEO be subject to the same annual discretionary base salary adjustments as all other Brazos River Authority employees. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors hereby instructs staff to submit a letter to the Legislative Budget Board in accordance with Texas Government Code 669.003, notifying the Legislative Budget Board of the Brazos River Authority Board of Directors' intent to vote in its next regularly scheduled board meeting on an amendment to the General Manager's CEO's contract, providing for an annual cost of living adjustment and the opportunity to receive an annual merit pay increase in accordance with the Brazos River Authority's methods of annually adjusting compensation for all Brazos River Authority employees. And be it further resolved that the contract amendment shall provide for the following. 1, if the Board of Directors authorizes an employment cost index compensation adjustment or similar cost of living adjustment for Brazos River Authority employees in a given year, the General Manager / CEO's base salary shall be likewise adjusted. And 2, if the Board of Directors authorizes an employee merit pay budget in a given year and the Board of Directors determines that the General Manager CEO's performance warrants a a merit pay increase. The general manager CEO's base salary shall be increased by the same percentage used to calculate the employee merit pay budget.
For the reading of the resolution is a motion to adopt. Zach. Sal. And
Masterson.
Masterson.
Thank you.
Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Scott.
Yes.
Director Adams.
Yes.
Director Ball.
Yes.
Director Belt.
Yes.
Director Christensen.
Yes.
Director Christian.
Yes.
Director Creel.
Yes.
Director Johnson.
Yes.
Director Kilgore.
Yes.
Director Mackey.
Yes.
Director Masterson.
Yes.
Director Munson.
Yes.
Director Rankin.
Yes.
Director Tallis.
Yes.
Director Tesh.
No.
Director Zagadino.
Yes.
Is there any more business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you.